In January 2026, at the CES trade show in Las Vegas, Nevada, a Boston Dynamics Atlas robot stood on a stage and did something that made robotics engineers in the audience go completely silent. Someone in the crowd said, out loud, "Clean up the spill and find a way to warn others." Not a specific command, not a button press, just a sentence, the kind you'd say to a coworker. And the robot understood it, walked over, found something to clean the spill with, and then went and found a way to alert other people in the room. That robot was running something called Gemini 3, the same family of artificial intelligence built by Google DeepMind that also powers the Gemini app on your phone. A researcher in the crowd called it a GPT-3 moment for robotics, comparing it to the exact moment back in 2020 when OpenAI's GPT-3 first showed the world that a language model could write like a human. Except this time, it wasn't writing. It was moving through a room, understanding a mess, and solving it on its own. And here is the thing almost nobody outside the robotics industry realizes. The body doing the walking, Boston Dynamics Atlas, is not really the star of that story. The brain is. Because right now, in 2026, the most important, most valuable, most fought-over piece of every single humanoid robot on Earth is not the legs, or the arms, or the hands. It is the software running inside its head deciding what to do next. And there is a war going on right now between some of the richest companies and best-funded startups on the planet over who gets to build that brain. This is the story of that war. Let's start with the company that most people don't even realize is fighting in this war at all. Because most people think of it as a chip company. NVIDIA, you probably know NVIDIA because of the chips inside gaming PCs, or because NVIDIA's CEO, Jensen Huang, walks on stage every year at NVIDIA's GTC conference in San Jose, California, wearing his signature black leather jacket to a crowd that cheers for him like he is a rock star. But NVIDIA is not just selling chips anymore. NVIDIA is trying to build the actual operating system for every robot on Earth. In March 2024, at that same GTC conference, Jensen Huang stood on stage and announced something called Project GR00T, which stands for Generalist Robot RoRo Technology, a foundation model, meaning a giant AI brain built specifically to control humanoid robots. Not one robot. Any robot. Huang said building this kind of brain was one of the most exciting problems to solve in all of AI, and he unveiled a new robot computer to run it called Jetson Thor, built on NVIDIA's Blackwell chip architecture, the same chip family powering ChatGPT and Gemini and nearly every major AI system in the world right now. By 2025, NVIDIA had turned Project GR00T into something called Isaac GR00T N1, which they called the world's first open humanoid robot foundation model, meaning any robotics company on Earth could plug it into their own robot for free and start teaching it to work. At GTC in 2026, Huang stood on stage again and listed off the companies already building on top of NVIDIA's brain. Figure AI, the humanoid robot company worth $39 billion. Boston Dynamics, the company famous for videos of robots doing backflips. Agility Robotics, the company whose robot Digit is being tested inside real Amazon warehouses. KUKA, the German industrial robot company that has been building robotic arms for car factories since the 1970s. Skild AI, a robotics AI startup out of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, Universal Robots, one of the biggest robotic arm makers in the world. NVIDIA is not trying to build the one robot that wins. NVIDIA is trying to make sure that no matter which robot wins, the brain inside it is NVIDIA's software running on NVIDIA's chip. It is the exact same strategy NVIDIA used to dominate the chatbot boom, when every AI lab, from OpenAI to Google to Anthropic, ended up training their models on NVIDIA hardware no matter how much they competed with each other. Jensen Huang said it plainly on stage at NVIDIA's headquarters in Santa Clara, California, physical AI has arrived, every industrial company will become a robotics company. That is not a small claim. That is NVIDIA saying it wants to be underneath literally every robot on the planet, the same way it is underneath literally every AI chatbot on the planet. Now let's talk about the second major player in this war. And this one comes from the company that arguably started the whole modern AI boom in the first place. Google DeepMind. DeepMind, based in London, England, is the same research lab that built AlphaGo, the AI that beat the world's best human Go player, Lee Sedol, in a match watched by hundreds of millions of people back in 2016. A moment so significant it became the subject of its own documentary film. DeepMind spent years after that working on a research project called RT2, short for Robotics Transformer 2, which was one of the first systems in the world to prove that a language model, the same kind of technology behind chatbots, could actually control a robot's physical movements, not just talk about them. Then in March 2025, DeepMind announced something bigger called Gemini Robotics, built on top of Gemini 2.0. The same core AI family running inside the Gemini app millions of people use on their phones every day. Gemini Robotics could take a spoken instruction in plain English and translate it directly into physical movement. And DeepMind proved it could work across completely different robot bodies. From a two-armed research robot called Aloha 2, used in labs at places like Stanford University, all the way up to a full humanoid robot called Apollo, built by the Austin, Texas company Apptronik. DeepMind partnered directly with Apptronik to put its AI brain inside Apollo, the same robot that Google itself had already invested hundreds of millions of dollars into. And then, in January 2026, DeepMind made its biggest move yet, when it partnered with Boston Dynamics to put its newest and most powerful model, Gemini 3, directly inside the Atlas humanoid robot. The exact demonstration you saw at the beginning of this video, where the robot understood the instruction to clean up a spill on its own. Boston Dynamics, once owned by Google itself, then sold to Japan's SoftBank, and now owned by the Korean car company Hyundai, effectively became the physical showcase for Google's AI brain. Google is not trying to build the most robots. Google is trying to make sure that whichever robot company builds the best hardware. It is Google's Gemini AI making the decisions inside it. So that is NVIDIA's approach, and that is Google's approach. Now let's talk about the one company doing something completely different. Because instead of licensing its AI brain to everyone else's robot body, this company is building both the brain and the body itself under one roof. Tesla, back in 2021 at Tesla's AI Day event in Palo Alto, California, which you can still watch on YouTube, Elon Musk first announced a humanoid robot project he called Optimus. And the audience actually laughed, because the only version they showed that day was a person in a robot costume dancing on stage. Nobody was laughing by January 2026 when Tesla's Fremont, California factory, the same factory that once built the Model S and Model X, had converted part of its assembly lines specifically to mass-produce real Optimus units. Musk's argument for Tesla's approach is that the exact same AI system Tesla already built to let its cars drive themselves, called full self-driving, running on neural networks trained on millions of miles of real-world driving footage from actual Tesla cars on actual roads, is fundamentally solving the same kind of problem a robot needs solved. Understanding a messy, unpredictable physical world in real time and reacting to it correctly, whether that world is a highway full of other cars or a factory floor full of car parts. Tesla even designed its own custom chip specifically for Optimus, called AI-5, built to run inside the robot's body the same way Tesla's self-driving computer runs inside its cars. Where NVIDIA wants to sell its brain to everybody and Google wants to license its brain to whoever has the best body, Tesla wants to control the entire stack itself. The chip, the software, the arms, the legs, the factory that builds all of it, the same way Tesla already controls almost every part of how its cars get built and sold. It is a massive bet, funded entirely by Tesla's own cash instead of outside investors. About $20 billion of capital spending planned for 2026 alone, some of it going directly into Optimus. Now here is where the story gets even more interesting. Because while NVIDIA, Google and Tesla fight this out as giant companies, there is a whole separate battle happening among startups nobody outside the robotics world has heard of. And some of them are already worth billions of dollars without a single finished product on the market. Physical Intelligence, a startup founded by researchers who used to work at Google DeepMind, Stanford University and UC Berkeley, is building something called Pi Zero, a foundation model designed to control literally any kind of robot, whether it has wheels, arms, legs or wings, and teach it tasks like folding laundry, making coffee or bussing a restaurant table. In November 2025, Physical Intelligence raised $600 million at a valuation of $5.6 billion, led by an investment arm connected to Google itself called Capital G, with Amazon founder Jeff Bezos also putting in money personally. And then there is Skild AI, a robotics startup out of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, founded by former Carnegie Mellon University and Meta AI researchers, building something they call the Skild brain, which they describe as an omni-bodied brain, meaning one single AI system capable of operating literally any machine that can move. In January 2026, Skild AI raised close to $1.4 billion, pushing its valuation past $14 billion in a round led by Japan's SoftBank, with NVIDIA's own venture capital arm also putting money in. Alongside Jeff Bezos again, investing personally in yet another robot brain startup. Skild AI's technology is already running inside real factories, deployed on NVIDIA's own Blackwell chip production lines at a Foxconn assembly facility in Houston, Texas. The same Foxconn that builds iPhones for Apple in China, now using Skild's AI brain to help run robots on an American factory floor. Think about what that means for a second. NVIDIA, the company trying to build the brain for every robot on Earth, is also personally investing money in Skild AI, a startup trying to build a competing brain, while simultaneously running that startup's technology inside NVIDIA's own chip factories. Everybody in this race is betting on multiple horses at once, because nobody actually knows yet which brain is going to win. According to research firm PitchBook, total venture capital investment into robotics and what the industry now calls physical AI reached $27.6 billion in 2025 alone, more than double the $13.7 billion invested the year before, and more than double the previous all-time record set back during the tech boom of 2021. $27.6 billion poured mostly into companies that, as of right now, have almost no robots actually working real jobs at any real scale. So why? Why would anyone bet billions of dollars on an invisible piece of software instead of the robot body everyone can actually see and film for YouTube? Because whoever builds the winning brain does not just make money once. They make money every single time anyone, anywhere, builds a robot. Think about how NVIDIA's chips work inside AI chatbots right now. OpenAI needs NVIDIA chips to run ChatGPT. Google needs NVIDIA chips to run parts of its own systems, even though it also builds its own chips. Meta needs NVIDIA chips to run Llama. Every single competitor in the chatbot war still had to buy from the same arms dealer. And that is exactly why NVIDIA became, briefly, the single most valuable company on the entire planet in 2024, worth more than Apple and more than Microsoft. Every company racing to build the robot brain is trying to become that same kind of arms dealer, but for the physical world instead of the digital one. If Figure AI's robots end up in BMW's Spartanburg, South Carolina factory, And Apptronik's robots end up at Mercedes-Benz, and Boston Dynamics' Atlas ends up at Hyundai plants, and Tesla's Optimus ends up in Tesla's own Fremont factory. The brain running underneath every single one of those robots could belong to just one or two companies, taking a cut of the value created by millions of robots in millions of factories all over the world forever. That is why the body gets the YouTube views, the viral videos of a robot doing a backflip or folding laundry, but the brain is where the actual money and power will end up living. Here's a way to think about it that makes it click. Imagine every smartphone on Earth, iPhones, Samsung Galaxy phones, all of them running different hardware made by different companies, sold in different countries at wildly different prices. But almost every single one of them runs software built on either Apple's iOS or Google's Android. The phone is the body. The operating system is the brain. And owning the operating system turned out to be worth more over the long run than owning any single phone. That is exactly the bet NVIDIA is making with Isaac GR00T. That is exactly the bet Google DeepMind is making with Gemini Robotics. And that is exactly the bet Skild AI and Physical Intelligence are making with their own foundation models. They do not necessarily need to build the best-looking robot. They need every robot, no matter who builds it, to be running their brain. Now, Figure AI, worth $39 billion, is trying to play a slightly different game. Because unlike the pure brain companies, Figure builds both its own robot body and its own AI system, called Helix, keeping the whole thing proprietary instead of open to everyone. Figure's robots have already logged over 250 runtime hours on BMW's real production line in Spartanburg, South Carolina, and handled more than 90,000 actual car parts, according to disclosures reported by industry analysts. That is Figure betting that owning the entire stack itself, the way Apple owns both the iPhone hardware and iOS software, will be more valuable in the long run than licensing its brain out to competitors the way Google licenses Android to Samsung. Nobody knows yet which strategy wins. Open brain that runs on everyone's robot, like NVIDIA and Google are betting on. Or closed brain built into your own robot only, like Tesla and Figure are betting on. Both bets are being made right now simultaneously by some of the most powerful companies and best-funded startups in the history of technology. And here is the part of this story that should genuinely give you pause. Because whoever wins this race is not just going to sell more robots. They are going to become the invisible layer of intelligence sitting underneath an enormous share of human physical labor. Every warehouse, every factory floor, every farm, every construction site. If humanoid robots really do end up doing meaningful amounts of the world's physical work over the next decade, the way every major tech company and every major investor currently believes they will, then the handful of companies that control the actual thinking layer inside those robots will hold something close to the position oil companies held in the 20th century. Except instead of controlling the energy that powered the world's machines, they will control the intelligence that powers the world's labor. That Boston Dynamics Atlas robot on stage at CES in Las Vegas in January 2026. Calmly cleaning up a spill and going to warn someone else in the room, all from one spoken sentence, was not really showing off a robot. It was showing off Gemini 3, a piece of software you cannot see, cannot touch, and probably will never think about, quietly proving that it could be trusted to understand the real, messy, physical world well enough to act inside it on its own. The robot got the headline. The robot got the video that went viral on YouTube. But the brain is the thing that is actually going to be worth trillions of dollars. And right now, in 2026, almost nobody outside this industry has any idea the fight for it is already well underway.